Hello. Thank you so much for having me here and for coming out so early, relatively early. I'm Boris Acket. If you know me, you probably know me from these sculptures that I make. I've been making work since about 2014, and I've been making kinetic sculptures that are really. Can I be a little bit less loud? Like I feel like Can you, yeah. Can you still hear me when I'm a little bit less loud? Because for me it's a bit strange. Okay. So I make these sculptures that are moving and that are playing with this sort of juxtaposition between control and surrender. I always was and am very fascinated by the philosophical realms, by thinking about things a lot. And I would say, like, right now I also play a lot with like our relationship with nature and with our environment. I started off differently. Like, I started off more from an electronic music perspective, so I was DJing a lot and I was in clubs a lot, and then I started to sort of find these boundaries of what can a performance space be, what can a club space be, what can you do with lights, what can you do with speakers apart from dancing in clubs. And I was always very fascinated by this, I don't know if you are clubbers, but by that, when you are on a good club event, that you are in this vacuum of space, it's outside of society. No moment will ever be anything like this ever again. And basically I started to make these kind of sculptures afterwards. Can you put the sound up of the presentation? So this is basically a very long speaker and light sculpture. I started making these sequential machines with which you can animate over distance with sound and light. You will see in a second also the speakers hanging. What was very special about this work is that we had these array speakers. You know the array. Can you turn it down a little bit? The array speakers that you have on pop festivals that are all in this line, right? And it's a line array. When you separate these speakers, they all have this very narrow beam. So in this case, it was very special that you had the sound was coming towards you, but there was a lot of reverb in the space. So you really had this sound coming like, so it really hit you. And then I would say, like, fast forward to now, in Corona, I started up a festival called Schemerlicht, which is probably hard or easy for you to pronounce. For English people, they get mostly to Gemmerlicht, but I don't know how you do it in Istanbul. Schemerlicht, it's like dawn light, it translates to. And I got to meet a lot of interesting scientists. It's a festival bringing together science, technology, and art. And I started in Corona experimenting much more with materiality. So I started off this fabric project called Einder, and it's one of my longest artistic research processes. Basically moving fabrics and other materials that you cannot fully control. And I just wanted to show these after each other because it's funny that you still see the long line and you still see the repetition, but you see some other filters coming in, basically, in this case, fabric. What I did not want to do today is run through projects like this. So I will stop with that now because I just became a father. This is Lotus, my daughter. And I realized a few things in the last months, I would say, and they really connect to my practice. So for today, I wanted to do the experiment with you to do a presentation a little bit differently and to talk from these three things that I realized and connect them to my practice. Because when you become a father, I don't know how many of you are parents, but your world changes a bit. And yeah, I would say my perspective changed a lot. I think one thing that I see in my child is like, and also it gives me a longing to be her almost, is this longing for being. She is very much in the now. She can only be in the now. And I am always busy with the now, and I'm always trying to get people to be like her, actually, because I want people to be like her in my works. It reminded me, like I was listening to a podcast after a very long night, hungover, and it was about Nietzsche. And it was this funny quote by Nietzsche, the philosopher, and he said, "Consider the cattle grazing as they pass you by. They do not know what is meant by yesterday or today. They leap about, eat, rest, digest, leap about again. And so from morn till night and from day to day, fettered to the moment and its pleasure or displeasure, and thus neither melancholy or bored. A human being might well ask an animal, 'Why do you not speak to me of your happiness, but only stand and gaze at me?' The animal would like to answer and say, 'The reason is I always forget what I was going to say.' But then he forgot his answer too and stayed silent." I think we want to be the baby or the cow often, right? 2, I had this very new confrontation with culture. Even the thing that we are in now is culture, like we invented the keynote. So welcome in our very human system. If you get a child, you get something very innocent, it's empty, and you start filling it immediately with clothing, schedules, feeding schedules, sleeping schedules, like, and everything that we invented as humankind. So I really got this new confrontation with culture, with human things. And the third thing is a very interesting thing also to me, is because I work so much with nature and our relationship to it, is that you really feel like an animal when you get a child. All of a sudden you feel caught. You are a complex ape. You are not a human in a way. And this is also a battle in yourself. These 3 things connect to 3 things in my practice, I would say. The first one I call duration. Duration is like derived from a French philosophical theory, durée, from Bergson. I will go into that later. Amplification is something with which you can basically go against the culture. By amplifying something, you can be a child again, I would say. I will also go into that later. And then the infinite paradox is really, in my work, I always use these tools. People think they get closer to nature, but actually, are they? They are in something that is very much plastic and machine-like and moving. So these things I will talk to you today about. And we start with duration. I will first let you hear something. So we listened to some very small results from an ecosystem that I graduated with. It's basically a system that allows you to animate with sound and light through space. The first one that we did was a very loud one, in which we had a microphone source in the middle, and then around in a circle we had these guitar amplifiers with analog delays in between them. It was a very loud and noisy installation. But what we realized is that when you start delaying stuff around you, you get to this very poetic juxtaposition of being in the moment that just happened and feeling more in the now through that action. So we found this a very poetic thing to do. So we did these live concerts, for example, with classical musicians who played with spatial echo, and it really felt like a meditation into the now through using the past moments. And then I started reading a lot about time philosophy, and we started off a bit too hard, I would say. I don't know who of you are into philosophy, but if you start with Hegel, for example, you get really disappointed in yourself that you cannot read it, and then all of a sudden, like, we did an event in Amsterdam, and we found this a French philosopher through an Amsterdam philosopher I invited for the event, and his name is Henri Bergson. And it's always good to do a thought experiment about the moment we're in right now. So let's just do that together. Like, how is our moment now constructed? Where are we? We are here. I am here. I just came onto the stage. I can do this talk because I rehearsed it, because I know what is coming. I can move from this moment to the next, to the next, to the next. You also all came here with an expectation, like for the Mercado Design Days. But we also brought with us memories. We also brought with us longer expectations and, and we are in this construct of a keynote presentation, again, that is thought up by us, and all these things construct our now that we are able to live through together. And basically, this is the core of what Bergson writes about. Our moment of now, the only thing we basically have, is wildly complex, and it is what makes us human. And then on the right you have Einstein, and they were both coming up in the same time, so it's like 1900s. And then in 1922 they spoke together about this subject of time. And Einstein is very much about time as something to calculate with. So he did make the relativity theory, which is a very abstract theory, but he thought of the subjective experience of time that we have, the one that I just explained, as something psychological, something chemical, and he just wanted to explain it like that. What I like about Bergson is that Einsteinian followers always try to explain that everything is influenced by time by saying, we are clocks. Because if you put a clock into the relativity theory, it starts acting strangely. And then Brunswick, a French philosopher, said, like, how can we be clocks? If I go through a day, I feel haste in maybe the first 2 hours, then I feel calmed, then I go on a train, and the train ride goes like that. So I maybe am in 25 time zones in a day that I make myself. I'm a clockmaker. And I really like that analogy. Getting back to my work. I really was very inspired by this time philosophy because it sort of shifted my perspective on what we as humans see in every moment that we live through. And I made a work called Durée, and this is the floor plan of it. And basically, what I wanted to do is, like, I work with this percussion collective a lot from The Hague, and I wanted to make a piece in which the two percussionists are a moment, and they make a moment in the middle of the space that they will never be able to hear themselves. So they are basically standing for two time zones connecting in the middle. So they play a piece 18 meters apart, and then they play on bell plates, which are these, can you turn the volume a little bit up? Which are these church bell simulators almost. And they play through the ecosystem a moment in the middle of the space where you can like feel these two time zones culminating. And this year, the duration series, it became a series now, got even more refined. I'm now doing a show in Next Museum in which duration really became sort of its new grown-up form, I would say. And this is what it looks like. It's now like 12 months in a museum in Amsterdam, for if you go there soon. What I really loved about this iteration is that it sort of proved, the reactions of the people proved the Bergsonian time view. I will first show the work. Can you turn up the volume? A little bit louder? Louder? Oh, it's very soft, apparently. The people that visited the installation were saying we were talking about forests and about insects and living trees. They were seeing this, they were hearing this, and I think it's very interesting that this immediately proves like you cannot see a forest or a tree in a scaffolding structure if you don't take the memory of that forest or the tree with you in the space. So I felt very satisfied that the system was sort of proving its own point. Other works that have this duration thematic a little bit in them are, for example, a work that I did with Sabine Marcelis called Sunbeam Captured. I found this sunbeam in a build-up. Happily, I filmed it. It was only there for 3-4 minutes. And I found the transience, or like this temporality of the sunbeam very interesting, and I was like, maybe I can make a work in which I capture it. So essentially trying to stop time from happening and having this eternal sunbeam in a pool of water. And then together with Sabine Marcelis, we also try to capture this feeling of the colors that the sun can take in dawn or dusk. And we basically try to capture this sunbeam. What I liked about visitor reactions here a lot is that it was this melancholic machine almost. People were talking about memories of a dusty student room with this one light beam falling through the curtains, but also even like early memories like 4-year-old showering with your parents between their legs, stopping the water from going into the, sink, and then making waves with your hands, a memory that I also very much have. And I really like that this sort of connecting thread between all these memories started occurring, because my work was actually about stopping that time from happening. And I loved that this melancholic layer was really communicated, but very, very indirect. Yeah. Then also what I like to do now sometimes is showing a possible future. I had the very big privilege to work with Ryuichi Sakamoto, and a composer who reinterpreted his works. He is a pianist. Ryuichi had this project saving trees, basically, and we intercepted a tree that was scheduled to take down and put it in a theater like it was a whale skeleton in a natural history museum to show a possible future, maybe to say that we might see trees like this one day. And then after the festival, we laid the tree to rest in a forest where it was shelter again for small insects and new plant life. I did sort of a third version of the project, and this one was very fun to me because we were working with a team of archaeologists, and they hate trees. They really hate them because trees destroy their work. And then I asked a team of archaeologists to dig out a tree with me, as if it's a archaeological treasure. So this is us doing it. What was very funny is like this project was very much about the time it takes for such a root system to develop. This is one of 150 years old, but it was also very much about what is worth to us. And sure enough, like after 2 days of digging, the archaeologists find a Roman earpiece to clean your ears with. Can you imagine? Like they said, like they used to clean their ears with this copper piece. And I lost them for 4 hours, and I was alone in this beautiful root system. I was like, what is more important here? Yeah. So basically we exhibited it like this sort of creature in a scaffolding structure. And the root system even expanded much more in the ground, but we couldn't take everything out. So this is what it looked like. And finally, like with one sculpture, like I always try to get people in the now, and often it works. With this one, I was just very proud that it worked with such a small sculpture, because I tend to work quite big. we worked together with this psychologist who did this dissertation on open eye meditation, which is a meditation method that you can do with your eyes open. And we created a sculpture that would sort of silently lure you into such a meditation without telling people. And in my solo exhibition in Berlin, people really stayed in this work for around 50, 60 minutes on average. So it was very fun to see that working with a silent instruction, inviting people to really get into that moment. Before we go to the next chapter, I just want to let you hear something. Can you bring it up? Where were we? I know you all know that we were at the coast. But the recording is of a very dear collaborator of me, Gordon Hampton. He's an acoustic ecologist. He basically listens to the natural world to study it. And he's also very much a listening activist. So basically recording for him is a protest gesture. We were in California on a beach where you had swell waves without wind. Swell waves without wind are generated on the ocean, and then their power is still present when they come to the coast. And then in a very specific place where you have these gigantic tree trunks that go onto the beach and you can enter them. So the moment that you heard that coming in, you entered the tree trunk. And it's this specific wood where they also make violins from. So in Gordon's words, you hear the fibers shake. Basically, Gordon's practice is a lot about silence, and silence is basically sound without human presence. I will read you this quote because it's beautiful. Silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. It is the presence of time undisturbed. It can be felt within the chest. Silence nurtures our nature, our human nature, and lets us know who we are. Left with a more receptive mind and a more attuned ear, we become better listeners, not only to nature, but to each other. Silence can be carried like embers from a fire. Silence can be found, and silence can find you. Silence can be lost and also recovered, but silence cannot be imagined, although most people think so. To experience the soul-swelling wonder of silence, you must hear it. Gordon taught me about amplification. And it was really a discovery for me. A nice, again, sort of thought experiment or listening exercise to do for 20 seconds here together is to listen to the faintest sound. So like the faintest sound is the softest sound in this space. So let's just take 10 seconds and listen for the smallest sound, okay? Now, what I like about that super small listening exercise, I advise you to do it much longer, is that you feel your ears extend a little bit. We get to that cultural part now. Like what Gordon said to me is like, when we grow up, we get taught how to listen. Basically, you listen to quote-unquote important things. You listen to the human voice, alarms, cars, teachers, everything that we put into the world that is important and mainly loud. It's not faint. So what he says is that you sort of slowly, gradually build these filters around your ears. And what he said is like, and I don't know if you, like I did a lot of field recording, and field recording is amazing because you put headphones on, you listen to the world that you know, you turn up the volume, your ears extend, you shrink like an insect, and you tread through a world that you know very well, but all of a sudden it becomes unfamiliar to you again. And then you put your headphones off and you get the same thing that we had just now. If you listen to the faintest sound, your ears extend. This is what I mean with amplification. Like Gordon always explains this example with, you put a microphone on the world and the brain says, hey, the microphone is important, so let's listen to the microphone. And then because you put the world a little bit louder than your ears are used to it, you bypass the filters that are installed, basically. What I really like about this analogy, if you go about this metaphorically, is the works that I make and the group of people that are making these works around me are also metaphorical microphones, in my opinion. They amplify something so you can reconnect to it. So basically, I want to show some works now that are amplifying something. This one we already saw, but this was the start of the Einder series, and in this series of works, it's really the amplification of the movement of fabric and sort of this endless research project on how can you move fabric and what kind of shapes will emerge in the spaces that you cannot really control. And yeah, it's really an endless project at the moment. Like we continuously come up with new ways of controlling it, and it's very inspiring to me. What I really like about it is that because there is such an openness between the work and the receiver, we get a lot of the same styled reactions on these works as on the works with, for example, Sabile Mercedes. So they are really melancholic. And with this specific one, mainly, it was very special because this is an old Soviet-style power plant in Budapest. And when we hung it, I didn't realize that probably this is the freest thing that ever moved in this factory. And a lot of the people that were from the local community really sort of like, we had a lot of crying people in this work. And I, at the first instance, didn't get it, but like everything was harsh. Also the demolition, like imagine how it sounded in here when they took out all the turbines and the machines. And then all of a sudden you have this free entity roaming. In this iteration, we took control and surrender like to the extreme, in a sense that we made this autonomous system which could move storm cells in and out of the building, controlling light, sound, and movement. So we did pre-parameterize, if that's a word, this work, but then it was free, and every storm was different. And here it was very beautiful that you could also traverse and see the work as a landscape. And now what I really like about these long research trajectories is that you get really deeper into what can move fabric. So for example, in this case, we made a wing that we can turn and that is able to create these wake turbulences and turbulences that move fabric. So it really is sort of a gift that keeps on giving at the moment. This one I also really love in this amplification realm, because people say to me when they see this work, like I could look at this for hours, and then it's funny that you trick people into looking at wind. So basically, the only thing you add is a piece of very big fabric. And then all of a sudden, this is interesting. The funny thing is that when people see this work and then traverse in the world again, they often are a little bit more open to seeing things blowing in the wind. So I really like that you can create that sort of consciousness with it. This to show this skill. It was a very scary work to put up. And wind is very strong, we learned. The last one in this chapter is one I did with Tina Farifte. She's an Iranian refugee who came to Holland, and she made a work about her surroundings in Friesland. You don't know Friesland because it's a Dutch province in the north of Holland. It's very flat, it has a lot of cows and a lot of dikes and a lot of water. And it's sort of home to her as she never found home before. And with this work, what I really liked is that she taught me, this is sort of the physical manifestation of the dike in her surroundings. We made a sun, a moon, the dike, and her video was the horizon. But what she really taught me is in this text that I will read a part of. Every day I climb the Zeedijk. I climb straight up. I look at the sea. I look at the sky. Infinite variations in color and substance. I'm watching almost all borders disappear and how the horizon remains as the only border between heaven and earth. I find that really, really striking from someone who is always in her life so confronted with borders to walk on top of a dike, to see the sun, to see the moon, to see the horizon, and then all of a sudden feel very small and universal and see that there is actually only one border. And I love those sort of privileges almost of these discoveries when making these works. Then we come to the end of the thematics, the infinite paradox. I call it infinite because it's this thing that keeps on recurring in my work. When I started these nature works, I think I was as naive of thinking that I was bringing people closer to nature. I invite you to reconnect to nature, but now I'm doing it for 5-6 years and I'm thinking, I am not. I am actually also showing that we are very far away from it because we are the only species who could do this. What I mean with this is that even Gordon, who is the most poetic speaker about nature, needed a headphone and a microphone to reconnect to this. So it's basically this tool that in my practice is so important is also a very big paradox to me. But I do like that became so apparent. A director who I worked with in the past month said to me, Boris, actually you're making plastic trees. And I think that's a very beautiful analogy as well, because we are the only species who voluntarily put plastic plants in our house and become happy from them. And basically, indeed, I make very big plastic seas or very big plastic suns. And I think it's very good and humble to sort of accept that also. A few more works in this section before we round off. I created, in the winch system that we have, I always used to work with these light materials, and then I did a switch. Can you turn up the volume a little bit? And we had all of a sudden this silver material in it. And a beautiful relationship became apparent. Like this thing moves, it's very loud when you're next to it. You cannot really talk to each other because the engines are humming, and mainly because of the sound from the material that is just like doing that, crackling. But with each crackle, the material slowly degrades. But with each crackle also, a new projection evolves on the floor. So it's basically this beautiful closed loop of creation and destruction that is happening in the space. And what I really like with this work is that it was an accident, but I didn't have to do anything anymore because the sound is also very beautiful. So the sound is the destruction, is the creation, and is the work. Basically, we are now, this is in Houston, degrading in 12 months 10 fabrics, and then afterwards we will reuse those fabrics in collectible works. Yeah, the paradox of belief is also very, very important in this chapter. Like, what I really like is that we all, at one point in our life, dreamt of flying. I worked with a jazz pianist, Tigran Hamasyan, on a project that's called The Bird of a Thousand Voices, which is an Armenian folktale. And he asked me to make a kinetic sculpture for the stage scenography. And we made the Bird of a Thousand Voices, which is like a Da Vinci machine-inspired kinetic sculpture that portrays this desire to fly of humankind. And this is then in a stage context with the full reach of the engines, 12 meter around. And what I like about this is that it's a machine that really looks like it will fly at some point, but it will never, like Da Vinci's sketches. We had one of these reviews that I loved, in which it said, in the wings you might also see a Da Vinci flying machine, a mechanical structure that mimics nature and captures the human desire to fly. The same ambivalence between the natural and the artificial can be found in the music, in the pure sounds of the instruments versus the distortion of the synthesizers and the mixing consoles that Hamasyan manipulates. Second to last, the Sunrise for the Sleepers work. I discovered that when you manipulate tom-toms with massage pistols, you get very interesting sound effect. And then I discovered, because I work with these very powerful tungsten lights, that when you put them behind the tom-tom detunes. And then afterwards, I discovered that for us as humans, when we listen to the sun, it sounds like a vibrating metal plate. So then I was very happy. Can we listen to it a little bit? We started this project because it's a Stockhausen tom-tom. I don't know if the name Stockhausen means anything to you, but he's an experimental 60s composer. And this is an original Stockhausen tom-tom, like poured for him especially. And he did these microphone experiments in which he scanned with microphones tom-toms. It's really wild. If you ever come across a tom-tom, hit it and go with your ear like this, because it's amazing. Basically, we try to do a new interpretation of his sonic research. What I love about this interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation is that we always do that as humans. So we say the sun sounds like a bell, but do we actually know that the sun sounds like a bell, is my point. The last one before closing off is, this question was posed to me once by an artist who works a lot with thematics surrounding aliens. She said to me, what would you ask an alien if you would meet him or her here on Earth? I think this is also a question you should now collect, because in the next party that you go to, it's a very good question to ask someone. And she said to me, I said, I don't know. And she said to me, I would ask, are you also so alone? And that really hit me, because we are so alone in the black void on our small blue planet. And I made this work in Amsterdam. I really see the same loneliness in lighthouses. I'm a very big lighthouse fan. And they always seem to project this sort of trust, but also this presence of loneliness almost from us as a species, just like blinking. We are here, we are here. Yeah. Altogether, I'm quite a positive person. And I just wanted to round off with I hope that what you take from this presentation or from these works or other works of other people around me, that if you allow yourself to see it, there is only one border, the horizon, for example. We all share memories that connect us. Every human being, almost literally every human being, has dreamt of flying. Destruction can bring creation, it doesn't bring creation. We can live in the now with a little help. So getting back to my child, like I invite everyone to sometimes be a baby, basically, and to shift your perspective sometimes. Thank you so much.